Archangels, please put your hands together for the one, the only, Elizabeth Gilbert.
You keep saying you got something for me, something you call love, but confess you've been a messin' where you shouldn't have been a messin', and now someone else is.
And to all the men in the audience, my name is Elizabeth Gilbert. I wrote a book called Eat, Pray, Love. You may have seen it on a movie, on an airplane at some point, but thank you. It's wonderful to be here. I love a standing ovation before you say a word. That's like no pressure. Let me see if I can deliver on that. Thank you for letting me be here. So much love in this space. I want to talk today about the divine feminine, the divine masculine, the profane feminine, and the profane masculine. Yes, yes. Okay, so essentially, it goes like this. For a long, long time in the evolution of human philosophy and human thought and human law and collectivist society, the idea was really that the most powerful person wins, right? And if you look at Hammurabi's code, going back the very first sort of codification of human law that we can see written down, the law, the rule was the stronger one gets all this stuff, right? This is a rule that is based in the profane masculine. It's the idea of conquer, destroy, smash and grab, subjugate, take what you want just because you want it, because you say so, because you have more power, and because you like it, right? And everybody else can just suck it. That's basically the rule. Fortunately, we aren't governed by laws like that anymore, and there are no more men like that operating in the world, certainly not in leadership positions in my country of the United States of America. So thank God that's all come to a close. I mean, we have a very beautiful, and by beautiful I mean grotesque, perfect, absolutely, like the Platonic ideal of the profane masculine is in the highest position of power in the world right now. So I don't have to tell you what it looks like. You know exactly what it looks like. But this miraculous thing happened around 3,000 to 2,000 years ago that's called the axial age, where there was this huge, sudden shift in thinking. And the shift in thinking, we could say that it was most beautifully expressed by Confucius, by Christ, by Buddha, where these very thoughtful, very evolved men suddenly had this whole new idea. And the whole new idea was, actually, there's a world outside of me and my needs and what I want just because I say so. And if I can come out of myself, if I can abandon myself, if I can die to myself, and I can come forward and put my heart forward in the world and actually start to care about the needs not just of my tribe and my immediate people who I'm trying to protect in my holdings, but actually the weakest and the most vulnerable members of society, then this is a whole new way of being, right? And they expressed it beautifully, and they were great speakers, great thinkers, great leaders, and they've begun this massive change in masculinity. And I'm all for it. This is what I want to say. I love these guys. They're essential. They transformed the world. All of a sudden, there were these new, very radical ideas of you should love your brother, you should treat your neighbor as you do to yourself, you should take care of the poor and the sick, you should give, if you've got a shirt, you should give it to somebody who needs it, you should put other people's needs before your own, you should visit the sick and the hungry, you should take care of people who are in prison. These are radical ideas, or at least for scholars of the axial age, they're treated as radical ideas. Like something happened, there was this massive wave of consciousness. It was this next level of evolution in male consciousness. It was amazing. But what I want to ask you is, where do you think these guys got these ideas? Who do you think prior to the axial age was taking care of the sick and the weak and the vulnerable? Who do you think was feeding the hungry and giving clothing to the poor and visiting those who were in prison and looking out for the fragile and taking care of babies at the beginning of their lives and old people at the end of their lives? Who was acting Christ-like before Christ? Where did these ideas come from, right? Women. This is what basically was being taught in the axial age by these dudes was, you guys, you have to act more like women. That's essentially what they were saying. And it's like, what a radical idea. These are the greatest teachers of peace the world has ever known. Where did they come up with these divine ideas? It's amazing. And women are like, yeah, that's what we just instinctively do. That's what we've just always and instinctively done. Now, I, again, want to say that I love these dudes, and the reason that I think they're so important is because they brought that message to men, right? Because men super needed to hear that, right? And they still super need to hear that, and they're not going to really listen to it from a woman. So it's great that these very charismatic leaders came and said there's a different way of doing things, and here's how you do it, and you need to be compassionate, and you need to be empathetic, and you teach that. And the ultimate lesson of the axial age, the ultimate lesson that will take a man out of the profane masculine, which is smash, grab, power, I get to do so because I say so, everything belongs to me because I want it, to take them out of that and to move them into the divine masculine, which is essentially acting more like a woman. The bridge that will take you there is for a man to abandon the self, right? To abandon the ego, and that's what all spiritual lessons are about, is how are we going to get rid of the self? And again, I love this. I don't have a criticism against this. But there's one dangerous side effect that can happen with it. And this is what I want to talk about today. If you are a woman and you are being taught by charismatic, powerful, poetic, appealing, beautiful male spiritual teachers that the secret to becoming divine and closer to holiness is to get rid of yourself, what can happen in a woman's spiritual journey is that she doubles down on what she was automatically already doing, which is caring and loving and giving and sacrificing. She doubles down, and it goes actually from the divine feminine into the profane feminine. And what that looks like is a woman who, right? Yes, is a woman who is giving so much because she was taught that this is how you get holy, this is how you be sacred, this is how you be good, who's giving so much that she eradicates herself, that she eradicates her essence, and she becomes a martyr or a victim or destroyed by her own outpouring that she's doubling down on. My point being that a lot of the messages that came from those great spiritual teachers that were intended for men have been absorbed by women and actually turned into a liability for women. Men move from profane to divine, from profane to sacred when they give up the self. Women move from profane to sacred when they fucking get one, when they get a self. This is the difference. This is the difference. And I'm speaking about this from a very strong example. I'm going to give you an example from my own life, because I want to be, and I bet everyone in this room wants to be a good person, and wants to be a giving person, and wants to be a loving person, and wants to be a nourishing person, and wants to act and live from a place of compassion and understanding. I too want this. This is something that I strive for. I've been a spiritual student my entire life. All through my 20s, I was studying meditation, and I was reading these great male teachers. And I was like, I want to get on the other side of a self. I want to not have a self. I want to be love. I want to be an expression of love. And then when I was in my late 20s, there was a marriage that I was in. I love the passivity of that. There was a marriage that I was in. Not I got married. Let me rephrase this. I chose to get married and then realized that I had made a grave error. And then after 7 years of that relationship, I knew that I had to leave. Those of you who have read Eat, Pray, Love know that story. I'm not going to relive it today. But I want to tell you this thing that happened. The thing that happened is that my then husband was so furious was so furious and enraged and appalled, and his self, which he had never diminished enough to be able to move with reality and life, his self was so wounded and so angry that he went into deep power punishment mode on me. And my response to it, having been trained to be kind and compassionate and giving and loving, was to allow it. And I allowed it for almost 2.5 years. And when I say punishment, I mean punishment. His entire stance was, how dare you? I will make this as hard for you as I possibly can. As difficult as I can make it for you to go, because how dare you take from me the thing I want you don't get to. I will use all my power to make it virtually impossible for you to be free of me. And we were locked in that, and the way that I responded was, I need to be more compassionate, because that's what I was taught by these great teachers. I need to be more compassionate. I need to be more understanding. I need to be more generous with my heart. I need to see it more from his point of view. And so I just kept softening myself and giving more. Take the shirt off my back. How many shirts off my back do you need in order to be happy? Take it all. Take the house, take the money, take the car, take everything that I am, take all the money I've ever made. What do you need? Go, take, I'll give and I'll give and I'll give and I'll give and I'll give, because that's what it means to be kind and to be a good person. But what happened was that the more I did of that, the more enraged he became. And we got locked in actually what happens when the profane feminine and the profane masculine get in conflict with each other, and the masculine crushes and the feminine allows herself to be crushed. This is the darkest incarnation of what can happen between men and women. This is the darkest version of what can happen between us, and we were trapped in it until the day came when he went too far. Now, I want to speak for a minute about boundaries, because the Buddha didn't talk about boundaries, and Jesus didn't talk about boundaries, and Confucius didn't talk about boundaries, because for men, it's all about getting rid of them, right? In order for a man to soften into his divinity and into his goodness and his softness, he's got to shed those, right? So all of those teachings are about getting rid of all of that. So there's no lesson in there for women. There's no lesson in there for those of us who inhabit the bodies of the weaker species, the weaker version of the species on Earth, right? It's a dangerous theology to say all you should be doing is giving when you are the weaker version of the human species. Dangerous. Dangerous for both is what I want to get across. Dangerous for both. So what is a boundary? A boundary is not a wall. A boundary doesn't need to be aggressive. A boundary is not punitive. A boundary is a certain kind of sacredness that I feel like women never got taught. And what a boundary is, the best description I can think of it is from the great mythologist Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell, who I love so much, who traveled his whole life through books and through journeys around the world, talking to great spiritual leaders and mystics and reading the mythologies of all the religions, trying to figure out what our common human story was. Joseph Campbell was once being interviewed in the 70s on a TV show, and I think it was Bill Moyers who was interviewing him. And Bill Moyers said, "How does a human being render something sacred?" And he said, it's very simple. Anybody can do it. Any human can render something sacred. All you have to do is draw a circle around it and say, everything inside this circle is holy because I said so. That's how humans make sacred spaces. A temple is a circle. Everything in here is sacred. When you come in here, you take your shoes off, you take your hat off, you touch your forehead to the ground, because once you cross over this line, you're in sacred space. And you react accordingly, and you respect that because you respect the sacred. And somebody drew that line. A human being drew that line and said, over here is sacred, over here is profane, this is holy, this isn't. A boundary is the circle that you draw around something to say that everything within that circle is sacred. Does that make sense? Okay, so for a woman to step into her sacredness, she's got to do that around herself, first and foremost. Around herself, to say everything, a circle around, everything inside this circle is sacred. Not in this way of I am Ozymandias the Great, look upon my works and shudder. It's not Kanye, okay? It's not I'm the greatest because I said so. It has nothing to do with being the greatest. It has nothing to do with deifying yourself and making yourself into a higher power. What it has to do is it's actually an act of humility in this sense, in the sense that some governing force in the universe, and we cannot know what, gave you, individual person, female body, this one to take care of. You were entrusted with stewardship over this being first and foremost. Before you were given your children, before you were given your partner, before you were given anyone else, you were given this one. And a lot of women, most women, almost every woman I've ever encountered, never got the memo on that, right? Because from a very early age, the lesson was serve, surrender, give over. It's there was no sense that this thing is also sacred, right? So what happened during my divorce is that my then husband went too far and he stepped over a boundary into the sacred with me and violated it. Now, I didn't know that I was sacred back then. I would have never been in a 2.5-year battle like that had I known. I didn't know. I was too young to know. I thought my entire job was to be nice, make people happy, give whatever has to be given in order to serve, in order to please. But even me, as unformed and unevolved as I was, even me reeking with profane femininity, you know, which is just conciliatory and conciliatory. Even me, I felt it when he crossed this line, and I was like, oh no, this is not on. This is not on. This ends today. We don't have, in Western civilization, a female model of that that's divine. We have the virgin, that's different. We have the virgin who's also a mother, super weird, that's different. You know, let's combine all the, you know, and beautiful. There's a place for the virgins. There's a place for the mother. What we don't have in Western culture is Kali, is Durga. These are images of female power that come from the East, that come specifically from the Hindu pantheon. And for those of you who don't know Kali Durga, she's very fucking awesome. And she rides a tiger, and her face is blue or black, and she's got a long tongue that comes out down to here, and she wears a necklace that's made of men's skulls, and she's furious. And she's furious, and she doesn't get involved very often in human affairs. This is what I like about Kali, is that her natural position in the pantheon is that she's actually relaxing. Most of the time Kali she's in a pleasure garden, basically on a hammock, being fed dates and nice, sweet things, and being fanned, and basically reading O magazine and just having a nice day. Like, this is how Kali basically lives, and she's constantly being petitioned. She's being petitioned to come and interfere. Mom, hey, can you fix this? Can you give me? And she's like, go away, go away, go away. Until you cross a line with her. And then she burns that shit down, right? It will all burn, and nobody can stop her. Even Shiva is afraid of her. My example personally for what I think of that is at a recent protest march that I went to. I saw a very little old lady with white hair, and she had a sign that said, "Now you've pissed off Grandma." That's Kali. That's Kali. It's like, now you've gone too far. That's how the divine feminine expresses itself. Now you've gone too far. You do not get to violate anything that is pure, and that includes me. But that also, once you expand that sacred circle, right? So the divine feminine starts with putting itself in the center, and then it expands to a circle of protection for everything that is good and holy and sacred and must not be violated by the profane masculine getting out of hand, right? This is the checks and balances. This is the job of women, is to stop that shit, right? Not to allow it, not to enable it, not to be nicer, not to be sweeter, not to be understanding, not to be like, well, he never had a dad himself, so he doesn't know. None of that. To just be like, oh no, oh no. No, 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 no. That's gone too far. And on the day that that happened, where for the first time in my life I experienced the sacred and divine sense of, oh, you don't get to do that just because you're angry. You don't get to do that just because you're not getting what you want. This finishes today. The remarkable thing about a woman standing in that space is that it is a profoundly relaxing place to be. It's such an interesting experience. I've had it a few times in my life now where I'm like, oh, I don't care how you're going to react to this. What you feel is this kind of deep titanium spine that grows up from the earth itself into your very being, and it cannot be moved. And the feeling that I had that day, facing somebody who I had been afraid of and afraid for over the last 2.5 years, and afraid for myself about, because he was on a rampage. And facing him that day with this deep sense of, yeah, I don't actually care what you do to me anymore. But this line does not get crossed. In a herd of horses, the most powerful horse is the leading matriarch. It's a matrilineal line in horses. The stallions come in and out, they do their thing, they're not that important. The important one is the mare, who's the alpha mare. And what determines who the alpha mare is not that she's the strongest or necessarily the oldest or the biggest or the fiercest. The alpha mare in the herd is the one who is the most relaxed. Because they're a prey animal, right? So there's a lot of anxiety. They're skittish. Horses are skittish. And when there's a pack of them together, they're constantly waiting to be attacked. And the mare who is the strongest is the one who is the most relaxed. They all look to her. They all look to her. And if she's grazing and she's at ease, they know that they are at ease. So they don't have to be looking for predators at every second. They just look at her. If she's all right, everybody's all right. And the one rule of the alpha mare is nobody approaches without her consent. You just wouldn't. She doesn't have to fight it out. You just wouldn't. There's an energy that she has that just makes it very clear. You want to come near here, you do it respectfully. You want to enter the temple, you take your shoes off, you take your hat off, you bow down, you're on holy ground now. You don't violate this. And that's how the entire pack thrives. When women come into their actual divine feminine power, men have no choice but to respect it. And it actually assists men. I was doing no service to my ex-husband to let him behave in such a vile way. I was trapping him in that by participating in it. I was making him stay in his worst possible version of himself. And it wasn't until I was like, Kali, this shit stops today. I'm burning this. I'll burn this whole thing down. But you don't take another step in that direction. We're done. It was done on that day. There was a little bit of paperwork that had to be signed, but it was done. And he was free. Do you see? He was also free at that point. I freed us both. The divine feminine frees both the masculine and the feminine by knowing its own particular power. And I pray and hope that he's gone on to do other things, but I actually don't care. I don't really care. Because I don't have to, right? I don't have to pretend to care about things I don't care about anymore. This is another really important part of the divine feminine. I want to tell you another story. A year and a half ago, my beloved partner, Rhea Elias, died of pancreatic and liver cancer. On the day that I got the telephone call saying that she was ill, terminally ill, that they had given her 6 months to live, I was in a different city. I was doing an event. I got on the next plane and I flew home to be by her side, and I did not leave her side for the next 18 months as she died. There's an incredible thing that happened to me in the airport lounge as I was getting on this plane ride, going back home to be with her in this way that would completely transform my life. I needed to tell some people what was going on. I opened up my laptop and I looked at my inbox. Now, many of you may also get a panic response just from the word inbox. There is like a real thing happening in the world of people's inbox anxiety. You're like, oh, I'm at this conference and I'm gonna be punished for it because my inbox is gonna double because I didn't look. You know, we all have this anxiety. Like many of us, I have an inbox that I'm afraid of. In my life, the way that I handle my email is there are emails that I respond to instantly. There are emails that I respond to within a week, and there are emails that will sit in my inbox until the fucking sun explodes because I just don't know what to do with it, right? And they pile up, and they're months old, and it's like, and then I just get this wave of panic. I'm like, oh God, and I sit down to do it, and I'm like, oh, not today, also not. Years of being like, and they're deep, and they stack up, right? They're like the rings on an ancient redwood. They just go deeper and deeper and deeper. And I'm like, one of these days I'll respond to that. One of these days I'll respond to that. God, I feel so guilty. I feel so guilty because I'm not taking care of this, and I told this person I would do this thing, and I'm not. And that day when I was sitting in the airport about to go be by the side of the love of my life and be with her on her journey into death, I looked at that long list of emails, and I deleted every single one of them. And the reason that I deleted them is because it was so abundantly clear to me that I didn't care. That's why I hadn't responded. I hadn't responded not because I was too busy, not because I didn't know how to it's because I don't care. I don't care about you. I don't like you. You don't matter to me in any way whatsoever. You don't matter to me. I don't care that we went to high school together and now you want to reconnect. I didn't like you then. I don't like you now. I don't care. I don't care about your project that you want to collaborate with me on. I don't care about the book that you want me to blurb. I don't care about the family reunion that you're trying to get us to. If I cared, I would have responded 6 months ago to it. I don't care. These are the 3 most powerful words that a woman can have in her arsenal as she moves from the profane feminine to the divine feminine. This is not the same arsenal that a man needs to move from the profane masculine to the divine masculine. A man needs 2 words, and that is, I care. I care. I care about you. I'll put you ahead of me. A woman needs 3 words. I don't care. I don't care. Do it yourself. Do it yourself. Get your own. I'm not getting you the shirt off my back. Get your own shirt. These are the people who matter to me. These are the projects that matter to me. These are the causes that matter to me. I have one energy stream. It is mighty and powerful and fearsome and lit by fire, but if I pretend that I care about every single one of you and everything that you want me to care about, that thing will die, that fire will die, and I won't be the only person who suffers from it. The whole balance of the world of male and female energy will be jacked if my energy is depleted because I gave and gave and gave until there was nothing left of me. That's a loss for the entire world. So this is what I want to tell you. I want to tell you that for women who are constantly holding yourself up to some ideal of what it means to be spiritual, what it means to be good, what it means to be compassionate, what it means to get on the other side of the self, I want you to just play in your imagination for a little while with this idea that what will actually restore the earth and everything that is fragile and vulnerable within it that women have always been the protectors of, is if you get a self, dig deep into it, rooted in the ground, take the noose off your neck that you've been using to choke yourself and shame yourself and guilt yourself that you're not good enough. Trust that there's an inherent goodness in you. There's an inherent decency. There's an inherent compassion. You don't have to double down and kick your ass every single day to work it. You were born with it. It's your inheritance. Just act from it. Take that noose off your neck, put it in a golden circle, starting around yourself, and then bringing into it everything that needs to be saved and protected, that can then stand behind you as you stand on your flaming being in your titanium spine, and you say, oh no, that's not on. Here's the boundary. You step into this thing. You take your shoes off. You take your hat off. You bow down. You are in the sacred now. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Stephanie's gonna come. Thank you all. I appreciate it. Thank you. I love you all so, so much.
You just